So that brings us to thing number 2 this morning, which is Procter & Gamble. Speaking of a very consumer-reliant company, right? Procter & Gamble did beat on the top and bottom lines in the third quarter. 3 of its 5 segments did have volume declines as consumers pulled back on spending, but they're not really pulling back on spending. They're buying less stuff, but they're paying more for it. Yahoo Finance's Brian Sozzi sat down with Procter & Gamble CEO John Mueller, and they discussed the company's strategy in today's economic environment.
Well, the great thing about our strategy is that it is relevant and good in a good economic environment. It's equally or more relevant in a difficult economic environment. So the superiority of products, again, product, package, communication, go-to-market, good value for consumers and customers. You would want that in a good economic time. It's critical in a difficult economic time. A focus on productivity and cost control, very helpful in a good economic time, critical in a difficult economic time.
And so there you heard the comments directly from the company. And in those 3 segments that you were focused on a moment ago that declined in this most recent quarter, at least on the volume front, grooming, fabric and home care. You also saw baby, feminine, and family care decline. So those were all kind of single-digit percentage declines, but still holding up right now. And this is what I've talked about even months ago. Last year, one of the areas that continues to really kind of show some strength, even when you do have an economic downturn, areas like these little luxuries like beauty, accessories, things of that nature, things like your cup of coffee even. So it'll be interesting to see what Starbucks says when they do report later on this earnings season as well.
Yeah, and just to take a step back here, the big picture for Procter & Gamble is, as we just showed from the volumes, beauty notwithstanding, people are buying less stuff. Yeah. But they are paying more for that stuff. That is the calculation at Procter & Gamble. Just to put numbers around it here, unit sales, that is volumes, overall, were down 3%. Organic sales, excluding acquisitions, up 7%, and that's because they raised prices by 10%. So even if people didn't buy as much stuff, when you raise prices by 10%, you're able to make more money. That's how the economics of P&G are working right now. And you know, a lot of costs have gone down now for the company, or at least are starting to abate.
Right.
But there are other costs that are still on the rise that the company is dealing with. So we're in an interesting moment for many of these consumer staples companies in terms of that volume versus price calculus.
And it's the calculus for the consumer of where you're willing to compromise. And for a lot of the hygiene products that perhaps you've become accustomed to over years, that's where you see less of a compromising and just taking on some of the price in this near term. Even if you are buying less, you're still just saying, all right, I still want to stick with the brand that I know that I've used time and time again. And that's a benefit that P&G has. However, if you're a Target or a Walmart, then you start to say, all right, how do we upsell into the trade down consumer, into a consumer that just says, you know what, I just want to make sure it works when I'm trying to clean the tiles in my house, or if I'm trying to just make sure that I'm not perspiring all over the place in these hot streets in New York. So at the end of the day, I think that's where we could see even more of that trade down start to be discussed from the retailers themselves, who have been doing more of the private label or homegrown brands and pushing and promoting that to their customers as well.
Yeah, so there's that implication. There's the implication also, of course, for the other consumer staples companies. P&G really the first of the big ones that we're going to hear from. We were looking at a board of some of the others just a moment ago. So does this tell us how writ large they're going to do? Some of them have managed this price increase transition better than others.
Right.
So I think we're going to obviously be seeing that in some of these numbers here.
I'm not trading down on the deodorant. I can't do that yet.
No?
No,
am I allowed to ask what your deodorant is?
I'll tell you in the break.
Okay.
It's a good one. Best deodorant.